A famous Chinese proverb, 女性可以撑起半边天, roughly translates to women hold up half the sky. It simply means that women are equal to men. But the reality in China is often something very different. Violence against women is still accepted in many countries around the world, but that doesn't change the fact it still poses a severe threat to women worldwide. According to a national survey, domestic violence in China occurs in roughly 1/3 of the country's 270 million households. A survey by the China Law Institute in Gansu, Hunan, and Zhejiang provinces found that 1/3 of the surveyed families had witnessed family violence and that 85% of victims were women. Tang Jinying from the Media and Gender Studies Department at the Communication University of China says the actual figure might be even higher.
From looking at this figure, we know that this is a serious problem in China, but it's not only happening in rural areas, it's happening in the cities. And these cases seem to happen at home, so they are not easy to detect.
And what's worse, Tang adds that many Chinese women are not willing to report domestic violence to the police due to the traditional belief that conflict at home should not be made public. Chinese law says that women should enjoy equal rights with men in all spheres of life, but the idea that men are superior to women is still deeply rooted in many parts of China, and that's why experts say it's hard to identify cases of domestic violence. A study released by the All China Women's Federation shows nearly half of Chinese people believe it's reasonable for husbands to beat their wives.
This is true especially among older people and those living in rural areas. They think it's part of life.
This is one of the reasons Li gives as to why many people in China don't see domestic violence as a big issue. And what Li finds most surprising is that there are a number of educated Chinese who think that domestic violence is acceptable. But even though the overwhelming majority of domestic violence victims are women, there are some cases where husbands are abused by their wives. But as with women, men who have suffered domestic violence tend not to report it. Some experts believe that the key to this problem is to change people's entrenched views and empower them to stand up for themselves. Each year, the country receives more than 50,000 complaints, a tiny fraction of the estimated number of incidents. But on the positive side, there's an increasing willingness to speak out on the matter, and that's shown in a rising number of reported incidents. China's constitution clearly states its support of gender equality and women's rights, and the government's marriage law specifically prohibits family violence and sexual harassment. But experts say more needs to be done.
Some non-governmental organizations have started doing research and have taken real action, such as giving consultations and protecting the victims. These organizations aim to point out that domestic violence is not a woman's problem, it's a social problem.
But according to the WHO Sexual Violence Research Initiative, the mainland government does not publish official statistics on incidents of sexual violence. And with no ongoing scrutiny, the research initiative says there will be no coherent basis from which to monitor the problem and to develop effective prevention strategies. In addition, discrimination against women is a very visible problem in China. Since the one-child policy was introduced in 1979, many more female than male babies have been abandoned by their parents, and coupled with selective abortion, China now has an estimated 32 million more boys than girls. And though since 2000, the government has launched policies aimed at countering this imbalance, all these problems suggest that the emancipation of women in China still has some way to go, and the government has much to do to make true gender equality a reality in all sectors of society. Sylvia Gunawan, BON.